The blessed Baruch Spinoza entered the world in 1632, in a city already trembling with commerce, exile, and restless ideas. Amsterdam was not merely a port of goods, but a harbor for displaced minds, a sanctuary for those who had fled the violent certainty of dogma elsewhere. His very name, Baruch, meaning blessed in Hebrew, carried an irony that would slowly reveal itself across his life. Born into the Jewish quarter, surrounded by merchants, scholars, rituals, and prayer, Spinoza's earliest years unfolded inside a community that had survived history by clinging tightly to belief that his ancestors were Sephardic Jews who had escaped the Catholic expulsion from Spain and Portugal in 1492, a forced migration that had carved trauma deep into the collective memory of his people. Faith, for them, was not merely metaphysical comfort. It was cultural survival. Ritual preserved identity. Obedience preserved continuity. To doubt was not intellectual rebellion, but existential risk. Spinoza, however, was not born to obey easily. From a young age, he showed extraordinary intellectual promise. He studied Hebrew scripture intensively at the yeshiva, mastering religious law, theology, and traditional interpretation. He participated fully in the holidays, prayers, and communal rhythms that defined Jewish life. Outwardly, he was exemplary. Inwardly, something far more dangerous was forming. A quiet refusal to accept ideas simply because they were inherited. Later in life, with characteristic restraint, he would write that although he had been educated from boyhood in accepted beliefs concerning Scripture, he eventually felt compelled to embrace other views. This sentence, so calm in tone, concealed an earthquake. For in the 17th century, to abandon inherited religious certainty was not merely a philosophical act, it was social suicide. Spinoza did not reject faith impulsively. His doubts were not fueled by bitterness or rebellion, but by an unwavering devotion to clarity. The more he studied Scripture, the more he noticed its human fingerprints, contradictions, historical contingencies, emotional projections. The sacred texts did not read like divine dictation. They read like documents shaped by fear, hope, politics, and imagination died as Europe convulsed through religious wars, inquisitions, and dogmatic violence. Spinoza saw something most believers could not, that the idea of a personal, intervening God had not brought peace, but endless bloodshed. A deity who chose sides, demanded obedience, punished disbelief, and rewarded loyalty had become a justification for cruelty. Spinoza asked a forbidden question. What if God is not like us at all? This question would eventually become the foundation of his greatest work, Ethics, written entirely in Latin and published in 1677. The choice of language itself was deliberate. Latin was the language of reason, of geometry, of philosophy. Spinoza did not want emotional persuasion. He wanted necessity. His book was structured like mathematics, proposition following proposition, as if truth itself could be demonstrated without appeal to authority. And what he proposed inside that book was nothing short of heresy. God, Spinoza argued, is not a person. God does not stand outside nature, watching, judging, listening. There is no divine ear to receive prayers, no divine hand to perform miracles, no divine courtroom to reward virtue or punish sin. There is no afterlife waiting to correct the injustices of this one. Humanity is not chosen. The Bible is not divinely authored. God is not a king, an architect, a craftsman, or a military commander demanding holy wars. Not every image of God is a person. Spinoza claimed is a projection of the human imagination, a reflection of our fears and desires, not a revelation of reality. For traditional believers, this was not philosophy. It was annihilation. Yet Spinoza did something even more disturbing. He refused to call himself an atheist. God without AFAC2. The accused Spinoza of atheism was to misunderstand him completely. He did not deny God. He redefined God so radically that the word itself almost collapsed under the weight of its transformation, not God. For Spinoza was not separate from the universe. God was the universe. Or more precisely, God was the totality of existence and its laws, nature, substance, being itself. What exists, exists in God. Nothing can be conceived outside of this infinite reality. God is not in time. God is not an individual. God does not will things in the way humans do. God does not plan, judge, or care. Whatever is in God, Spinoza wrote, and nothing can exist or be conceived without God. This vision was simultaneously devastating and consoling. Devastating because it stripped humanity of cosmic importance. Consoling because it removed the terror of divine judgment. There was no wrathful eye watching, no ledger of sins, no eternal punishment awaiting human weakness. In traditional religion, prayer is central. One appeals to God to change reality, to cure illness, to grant success, to avert disaster. Spinoza saw prayer as a profound misunderstanding. To pray is to ask the universe to violate its own laws for your benefit. It is to imagine that reality bends to desire darkness, he believed. Was narcissism disguised as devotion? Whoever loves God, Spinoza wrote, cannot strive that God should love him in return. To demand divine favor is to misunderstand divinity. God does not respond. God does not negotiate. God is. Instead of prayer, Spinoza proposed understanding. The task of human beings is not to beg existence to change, but to understand why it is as it is. This idea drew deeply from Stoic philosophy. Like Seneca, whom Spinoza admired greatly, he believed that suffering arises not from necessity itself, but from resistance to necessity. Seneca had compared humans to dogs tied to a moving cart. Those who resist are dragged and choked. Those who understand move freely, even though the destination is the same. Freedom, for Spinoza, was never about escaping necessity. It was about comprehending it. This leads to one of his most powerful distinctions: the difference between seeing life subspecie durationis, under the aspect of time, and subspecie aeternitatis, under the aspect of eternity. Most human suffering arises because we see events only from our limited, ego-centered perspective. Something is bad because it harms us. Something is good because it benefits us. But from the perspective of eternity, these categories dissolve. What appears tragic locally may be necessary globally. Reason allows us to glimpse this wider perspective, to participate momentarily in eternal totality. Ethics, then, is not about obedience. It is about understanding. To be ethical is not to follow commandments, but to align oneself with the structure of reality. Happiness emerges not from desire fulfilled, but from desire transformed by knowledge. Spinoza envisioned a life free from guilt, shame, and resentment. A life without fear of punishment. A life of calm acceptance, grounded in reason. The free person, he wrote, is one who understands necessity and is therefore no longer enslaved by passion. But wisdom rarely survives contact with society. The failure of a perfect. I.D.A. Spinoza paid a heavy price for clarity. In 1656, he was excommunicated from the Jewish community of Amsterdam through a formal cherem. The decree was merciless, invoking curses by day and night, condemning him in every posture of existence. He was expelled, damned, erased. He fled Amsterdam and settled eventually in The Hague, where he lived quietly as a lens grinder and private tutor. He owned little. He sought no fame. He died in 1677, poor, calm, and intellectually unrepentant. For centuries, his work remained marginal. A few great minds, Hegel, Wittgenstein, recognized his genius. But the world did not follow him. Why? Because Spinoza misunderstood something fundamental about human beings. People are not drawn to religion primarily by reason. They are drawn by emotion, fear, belonging, ritual, beauty, the architecture, the music, the shared meals, the rhythm of tradition, the comfort of certainty. Spinoza offered wisdom without ceremony, truth without warmth, clarity without community. Ethics may contain more insight than scripture, but it lacks the scaffolding that allows belief to survive across generations. Religion thrives not because it is true, but because it is lived. Spinoza ignored this at his peril. And so, traditional religion endures, while his vision remains studied quietly in universities, admired, respected, rarely adopted. Yet his warning remains urgent. If we ever hope to move beyond superstition, we must understand not only reality, but ourselves. We must recognize that belief is not defeated by logic alone. It must be replaced by meaning, ritual, and belonging, or it will never disappear. Spinoza showed us what God looks like without illusion. The question is whether humanity can bear to look.